perhaps result in the consolidation with the NGO sector and then a reduction in diversity and complexity of NGOs. In the worst case, the system, the humanitarian system itself, and to a bigger, broader, CSO sector would obviously in turn to be at a risk of being less resilient than it was before. So the reality might well be opportunities are for some, but fighting to survive could be the main theme for quite a long time. But many would also argue that we need to really advocate for sustained political will to recognize trust and then build partnerships with CSOs, advocate to donors for further funding to CSOs, demand for power shift. Yes, indeed, such efforts should never be undermined. And I understand, today our Zoominars and also, the intent to really voice out CSOs in the upcoming summit is basically from that point of view. But meanwhile, I also wanted to say that it's equally important to think, if we demand a power shift together and building the trust, how we propose to do so, how we really address matters such as accountability, risk mitigation, and improved social connections that comes with such a request for a power shift. So as a final note, I think in the older reality, it has already been a painful and a slow to move forward for such a bigger question and theme. And I think on the latter part of our Zoomina, we will touch on APG and how we engaged further collectively, and there we could discuss a bit more. But I think in new reality, the sudden opportunities probably would never would not overcome the big questions that have been basically posed for everyone for such a long period. So what to do? That's basically why we are here to discuss. But one thing I think is quite certain, that international NGOs, national and local NGOs, and the community-based organizations as a whole, of civil society organizations, need really to find new ways of working together in solidarity and empathy, and also to work with others to live in this new reality. And then the choice we have is really about adaptation, collaboration, and the rediscovering roles. I will stop here and give back floor to Laura, and I look forward to the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimri. Yeah, I think it's actually very important for all of us to really reflect on what was shared by Kimri, because as she already said, this is a follow-up meeting, from a series of consultation and series of conversation that needs to be done to make sure that we are all, as civil society organizations, are agile to really adapt and stay relevant despite the challenges we are having at the time being due to the pandemic that we face in the region. So in terms of technical problems that are being faced by Puji as the discussion today, yes, it's already sorted out. So I will pass it back to Puji for him to lead and steer the conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you, Puji and Kimri. Over to you.
Laura, thank you for demonstrating how CSOs should work together. When one problem appears, you pick it up and just smoothly taking it over, right? So that's how we should work together. Anyway, so that was setting the stage from ICPA's perspective. Now, closer to home, I would like to call Rahmawati Hussein, the Vice Chairman of the Muhammadiyah Disaster Management Center, as well as board member of the UN Central Emergency Response Fund, SURF, and a proponent of Sejajar. Mbak Ama, if you would.
We lost your voice again, Mas Puji.
Oh my goodness. What about now? Still?
It is clear. I can hear your voice.
Oh, Mbak Ama is having a problem. Mbak Ama, please.
Okay, thank you, Mas Puji. I don't know, it's a cut off, yeah. So I will continue the point that bring by King Rui, and last week I didn't share how actually the national organization work. I will just share a screen to have the image how the network could work at the different levels. So it's very important to understanding the complexity of each network. And I'll give the example of how the Muhammadiyah organization in Indonesia working in dealing with the or responding the COVID-19. Okay, so for okay, so I just want to share the latest fact about the data on the confirmed cases and active cases. And right now, Indonesia is the highest. It's the total the total cases, and then the active cases, and also the total death is the highest in ASEAN. That's why many NGOs been involved in responding. So it's 1,000 NGOs registered, and even in Sejajar, the member right now locally is 600, at the national level 26. But I'm just giving the example of how the network among network. One of them is the Muhammadiyah. I'll just go through the very quick one. For those who have you of not knowing, Muhammadiyah is the 100 years more old organization. We have the network through branches in the province and throughout Indonesia. I just go, and also the institution like school, hospital. So what we do for the COVID-19 to respond is we ask the network throughout Indonesia to set up the Muhammadiyah COVID Command Center at each subnational level, at the provincial level and district level. And this COVID Command Center has to work with the local government institution or agency as well. So this is the network within Muhammadiyah. And what we do, we are also preparing our hospital throughout Indonesia to help the government in responding the COVID. So far, we 78 hospital of Muhammadiyah is already helping, and then we have almost 600 beds been occupied for the positive or confirmed cases in Indonesia, and we are not funded by government and fully funded by the NGOs. And this is the so far that up to June 16th, we already disbursed almost 11 million US dollars within with the fund that we already dispersed, and we already helped more than 3 million people in Indonesia from receiving mask and everything. So this is just to give the example how's the size of the network in Indonesia. Only one. We also have another big organization like Nahdlatul Ulama is also similar to Muhammadiyah, have the fast network throughout Indonesia. And we also, what we like, there is a new adaptation or localization. We also supported by DFAT and UNICEF in terms of the public awareness and education and food security program. So since we've been working very closely in the past with several donors and NGO, the localization is also work here in COVID response. And I just want to just go to Sejajar right now, as we presented last week. Right, last week still 23. Right now we increased the membership is 26 join at the national network, and then almost all provincial level they have also subnational network. So the proponent in the first is MDMC, Pujiono Center, and Oxfam. Right now is extended into 26 national network, including the humanitarian forum. It's almost forum, yeah. And then we have 600 subnational CSO NGOs throughout Indonesia. So as we already shared last week, the network, the vision is to have the broader perspective and also to have the access to contact throughout Indonesia. It's very easy to have the access if you have the network. Without having the platform, it's not easy to know each other, what they, and then to support the CSO by virtual meeting, webinar, and then we also have the cross-sectoral training and also good practices. What we want is to resonate advocacy agenda, and especially we have the collective position vis-a-vis to government, and then we also have the power for advocacy. And as we also know that this that what we have in vision is by, as Laura mentioned, we want to complement each other. It's not competing, but collaborating is the spirit of the sejajar, the jaringan antar jaringan as a network of network, and to help reduce the effect of COVID in more broader areas, and to size the window to build the future platform and spotlighting the vulnerable and marginalized. That's very important because the CSO work closely to the marginalized and vulnerable group. And then we want by having the platform to better respond and recovery of COVID by synergizing government, CSO and NGO and also other stakeholders, and then more open, inclusive, open, complementary. And for the last slide, I just want to see for the future to respond what King Rui mentioned, that need to have the adaptation and collaboration for organization like Muhammadiyah and other GSO. We have to deal with internal network, and then we have the external one. For like to help the Muhammadiyah have the internal, within Muhammadiyah is a very vast network, and then we also member of Humanitarian Forum, the interfaith based forum, and then we also a member of the platform of Sejajar, where HFI or Humanitarian Forum also the member of the Sejajar. So what we see in the future, we could use the Sejajar to extend or call for ASEAN CSO to join the APG, and we could use form in each every country to respond the network of a network. So if the Sejajar in Indonesia could be could become a platform, then the Sejajar could also extend the voice of all the CSO in Indonesia in responding the humanitarian needs. And then what we could also explore how the share lesson learned and best practices could be institutionalized through the platform. How this could be shared among the CSO within ASEAN region, because we have the similarities in culture and also in the way the CSO work, and then the strong led government in doing, like Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, Singapore have a very strong government-led response. So it's very important how to see the similarities and use the lesson learned and best practices within ASEAN country to be institutionalized. And then what we can also offer is more structured movement alliance. So we have the shared purpose, especially in terms of voicing the role of GSO in Asia or within ASEAN. It's very important to be more structured in movement. And then the last one is understanding complexity and complementarity. So the complexity within NGO, and then within the platform, and also with other platform in other country could be understood as part of the ongoing dialogue and dynamic of the GSO network. So we could learn by the complexity to address the way we work, and then the way the purpose or the shared purpose or the shared goals that we could level up into ASEAN, into the ASEAN forum. So that's what I think, Mas Puji, I would how the CSO network in ASEAN could use the APG as a forum for advocating or highlighting the role of CSO, and also could also use as a people to people or CSO to CSO work. And in Indonesia, we could also work through the government of Indonesia. I think that's my point, Pak Puji. I'll offer to you.
Okay, Mbak Rahma, thank you for explaining what the Sejajar is and where it's heading. Just a check. Is my voice coming out okay?
I cannot hear Pak Puji.
You cannot hear.
Yes.
Am I the only one who cannot hear your voice, Pak Puji?
Wait, let me check.
I can
Martino,
hear
can
you,
me?
Pak Puji.
Clearly.
Everybody
Very
can hear
Pak
me.
Puji.
Yes, I hear you, Pak.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Very good.
right.
Very clear.
Excellent. Okay, now let's move on. So Mbak Ama has been explaining what Sejajar is and where it's heading, but also looking at the opportunity to seize this time to expand and call for other colleagues to join hands to move forward. But anyway, I would like to move on now to our third speaker, Dr. Faisal Firdaus. He is the president of Mercy Malaysia, very, very prominent civil society mover in Southeast Asia and beyond. So, Dr. Faisal, if you please.
Thank you, Pak. I will be brief because if I don't, I have a tendency to be very long. So I will try to answer the questions that have been posed, and we'll stick to them as much as possible so that we don't lose focus. So first of all, thank you very much for...
Wait, Dato, could you turn your video on? I will turn mine off.
Yeah, I think the video is frozen. The video is frozen. I think so. I think, yeah.
Colleague, could you?
No, your video is on. I can see you clearly.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So,
right.
Right. So, thank you again for having me and for having Mercy Malaysia on board. We are happy to share and happy to learn as well. So, the first question is more inclusive decision making especially regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, but I guess it applies to all other emergency responses and disasters as well as preparedness programs. There are three key elements, I guess, and one has been spoken about already, which is trust, which is a big thing. It's not something that is easily obtained, but once obtained, it should be safeguarded very, very carefully, because it is easily lost. And if it's lost, it's so hard to regain. And I think this applies to both CSOs at the local level, as well as NGOs at the national, and those who also intervene and do work outside of their national borders, i.e. internationally. The second element, I guess, is the willingness, the political and social will, if you like, to actually do so, to actually be more inclusive. And here it applies more to government and more to structures like ASEAN, like the AHA Center, etc. However, it also applies to CSOs and NGOs, although we usually would like to put the burden of inclusivity and inclusiveness on government and on formal structures. But I put it to everyone that we as civil society players also have a responsibility and a role to be inclusive. There have been many times when formal structures like the AHA Center, like governments, actually reach out to the CSOs and NGOs, but it is the CSOs and NGOs who don't want to be so inclusive and don't want to partner. These may not be often, but they are significant. And the third element is, I guess, the necessity. Unfortunately or fortunately, we are sometimes governed by needs and necessity, and not just by political and social willingness and by trust. And that's unavoidable. And I guess that's why the COVID-19 pandemic is actually such an important milestone and such an important time in our lives and in the lives of our organizations and in the lifespan, if you like, and timeline of civil society networks and organizations in ASEAN. This is a golden opportunity for us to come together simply because no one can do it alone. And WHO and the UN, of course, have long advocated since the beginning of the pandemic response to actually have a whole of society as well as a whole of government. And nowadays we're talking about a whole of nation approach, towards combating COVID-19. And there is actually no other way. And that's where, with regards to civil society participation and inclusion in programs and in decision making, this is an opportunity for civil society to show itself, to bring itself up to government and to formal structures and say, look, we can contribute, and formal structures and governments also have the responsibility to actually include civil society, not just because they want to, but because they have to, and there is a necessity and need to. This is where civil society organizations will have to be smart and will have to do so at both national as well as subnational level. And I won't repeat what Ibu Rama has just presented. I think that was excellent. And apart from the subnational and national levels, there's got to be also coordination within sectors, between health and food, health and psychosocial, etc., as well as international players. This is probably the way to go forward. And of course, the inclusion of civil society. We have to push for the inclusion of civil society in decision-making opportunities and platforms at all these levels. And of course, not all civil society players may be able to be at all levels. Muhammadiyah may be an exception with its superb organization and coverage throughout Indonesia, especially. But there are not many other organizations like Muhammadiyah, and most of us will have to choose which platform and which level we will engage at. That's number one, I guess. With the second question, the inclusion of CSOs and NGOs, both at the national and international as well as local level, international meaning at least in the context of ASEAN regionally, to be involved in more disaster programming and planning for the future. I think, again, this is an opportunity like no other. The UN system and the Red Cross system have got already preparedness and response plans for the region, which actually can fit in civil society organizations. What we need to do is actually buy into it, as well as present our own views and presentations, and make these structures also accept us civil society organizations into their plans. Likewise, at the national level. At the national level, it is important to engage the respective national disaster management agencies, the NDMAs. And of course, they go by different names and have slightly different roles and authority in different countries. But this is again something to be cherished, this diversity, rather than to be looked at negatively. So in Indonesia and the Philippines especially, there has been a long track record of engagement with the national disaster management agencies of both these countries. It is incumbent now on civil society to actually engage further. And of course, taking advantage of the COVID-19 pandemic, we should also engage the line ministries involved, like the Ministry of Health, as well as the Ministry of Social Welfare, as well as ministries in charge of food and livelihoods. This is indeed more than just a health crisis. So with regards to the disaster programming and planning itself, we should start from preparedness, from mitigation, and not wait for the next emergency to occur. And of course, I usually say this, while we are in this COVID-19 pandemic, let's not forget, we are in the Pacific Ring of Fire. There are countries in ASEAN who are very exposed and very vulnerable to other disasters and other emergencies. Just imagine if we're not prepared, again, for another earthquake or another super typhoon or another volcanic eruption in the middle in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic still not under control. So we have to also take a wider view. And apart from having a look at COVID-19, we should also not forget that there is a possibility at any time that there is a natural disaster occurring in our region. And how then will national and international and regional players then respond? And if any, this is a good time as any for localization to come to the fore. Because obviously with all the travel restrictions, etc., there is no way that that international response can be as before. And this is the time perhaps for national and local CSOs and NGOs to actually prepare ourselves to be at the forefront and not at the back of a response to a major disaster, God forbid, if one happens in the middle of this pandemic. And the last question is how to get more CSOs, indigenous CSOs involved in ASEAN-wide platforms. We have the APG, we have theoretically have the ACPF as well, yeah. The ASEAN Civil Society Partnership Forum, yeah. All these are there, but of course it's whether these platforms are utilized and optimized to their optimal and maximal potential. But of course we also have to recognize that there are different roles for different platforms, yeah. ICVA is here. And as former chair of ICVA, I must say that ICVA has done a fantastic job being in the region, and the Asia Pacific office in Bangkok has done superbly. However, ICVA also has a specific role. We need to have more ways to connect. And again, the terminology of networks is probably the way to go. And I must congratulate Sejaja for being able to organize and to come together in such quick time, now having already 26 national level networks and major national level NGOs, as well as over 600, I hear, of local CSOs in your network. The term networks is often used, but not always understood. No one can be everywhere at all times, but we can all be represented by someone at all times at some level, yeah. So, and we have also got to accept that at some platforms, maybe Mercy Malaysia will not be there, yeah? Maybe Muhammadiyah will not be there, maybe someone else will be there, yeah. Maybe in some platforms it is better for a whole network like Sejaja to actually represent the NGO coalition rather than a specific NGOs. There will be times, of course, as Ibu Amas spoke about, there will be times, of course, to look externally as well. And that's where wider networks like the ADRRN, APRRN, who look at wider Asia-wide collaboration come into play, not just within ASEAN, yeah? As well as the inclusion of networks like ICVA. If we all work together and synergize, we can actually do a lot more good, including at the ASEAN Leader Summit. Now, before I end, I must say that next week's ASEAN Leader Summit is important, but as Ibu Intan would know, the last ASEAN Leader Summit in Thailand did not offer an opportunity for ASEAN civil society to actually interface with the leaders. The last time that happened was in 2015 in Kuala Lumpur. So it may be a bit too late for that to happen next week, but there is still opportunity and space for us to give voice to civil society, and we may have to be active at how we go about it. So I'll stop there for a while, Pak Puji. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dato. I hope my connection is stable now. See for that. So that's a very encompassing message from Dato Faisal there. There is a threat in front of us, but there's opportunities. But the responsibility goes both ways, the state and ASEAN leaders, but also for us. It's an opportunity. With that, colleagues, we passed a segment of welcome remarks with a lot of message, enthusiasm, optimism among all of us. How do we the best use of time before the summit, if there is any? How would we get involved in the future work? Because the summit is not, as Dato said, it's going to be next. and as well as among ourselves, how we can pull ourselves together. Now, before I move to the next one, I have an exercise that I would like to offer you. I would like to invite you to, okay, I would like to invite you to go to this just with a minute. Can I share my screen?
Yes, you can.
Please, Mas Puji.
Okay, thank you. So I would like you to go to this website, menti.com, right? And you enter the code 289408. Just very, very brief exercise as to tease out what you have in mind. Could you go to your mobile phone and enter this number, please? Now, in the next segments, we will have speaker will give us briefings. We're going to start with Mbak Intan Kusuma, and after we have Miss Hoa from Oxfam, Vietnam. But now, as you enter this exercise, we'll get to this exercise. A question, word or two, in your mind, the new means what? If you could enter to the Mentimeter in one word or two, what the new normal means to you. Okay, please. There you go. The new normal means resilience, localization. It means living with risk. It means increased vigilance. It's all going back to normal. It is, in fact, a new abnormal, I think. There's going to be new habits, agility. Go ahead. Anybody else? Okay. I think that illustrates the thought that we have. The new normal means adapting to a new resilience, creative way of living. New normal meaning more collaboration among ourselves, new habit, as also new hope, right? New style of living, I like that. That involve using more of technology to connect to one another. It means new normal means independence. Now that I will be interested to know who said that. Okay, and so on. Colleagues, let me just end there. I think it gives you some idea of what new normal means to us, and it will be more important to connect it to CSOs of what it means. As you move along with this, I would like to move on to the next segment now. Thank you for the one who already contributed. Right, we're going back to the room. Now, entering this new normal, new way of living, adapting and all that, I would like now to invite Ms. Intan Kusuma from ASEAN Secretariat. It's only fitting that we hear update directly from ASEAN Secretariat. And Intani is a senior officer at the Disaster Management and Humanitarian Affairs Division at the ASEAN Secretariat. Intani, if you please.
Thank you very much, Pak Puji. Hello, good afternoon, colleagues. It's my great pleasure to be invited to participate as speakers in this very interesting seminar. I actually really like the word seminar. It's very catchy, and I congratulate also to Sajaja for initiating this very collaborative platform that will enable us CSOs and also the NGOs to work together to support the ASEAN's efforts in disaster management. I understand that the discussion was supposed to be directed with regards to the ASEAN's COVID-19 response on and what the CSO can support in this endeavor. But I would like to inform you that I'm coming from Disaster Management and Humanitarian Assistance Divisions, the DMHA, and under the ASEAN mechanism, unfortunately, the response related to the COVID-19 is undertaken by the Health Department, the Health Division, and Disaster Management Humanitarian Assistance Divisions just playing a supporting role. The ASEAN leaders has also established the ASEAN Community Council Working Group on Public Health and Emergencies, and this will become a platform that would, enable a lot of actors to participate in the response to the COVID-19. Before I move to provide you an historical background on the APG, because I noticed that the previous speakers have already mentioned a lot about the APG, the ASEAN Partnership Group, and also the ACPF, the ACDM CSO Partnership Framework, which was initiated back in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. But the implementations, the practical implementations of this framework was not being fully optimized. So just to give you a brief overview on the ASEAN mechanism. In the ASEAN Secretariat, we have three different pillars. We have the ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community pillars, we have the ASEAN Political Security pillars, and the ASEAN Economic pillars. And disaster management is actually placed under the ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community pillars, along with the other 14 sectoral bodies, ranging from education, health, social welfare, youth, sport, labor, and many more. The things that our colleagues, our CSO colleagues need to understand is that the ASEAN is, is operating in accordance to the mandate by the ASEAN leaders. And as I mentioned that I'm coming from the Disaster Management and Humanitarian Assistance Division, so my main counterpart is actually the NDMOs, the National Disaster Management Organizations in all 10 ASEAN member states. We have already established mechanism. We have the ASEAN Committee on Disaster Management at some level, and also at the ministerial level, we have the ASEAN Ministerial Meeting on Disaster Management. We have also the working group, the ACDM working group, 5 working groups that are responsible in implementing activities or projects as outlined in the ATMER work program and also the ATMER, the agreement. So what I would like to emphasize here is, while it is noble for our colleagues from the CSOs to elevate this into the next ASEAN Summit, and this has already been mentioned by Dato' Ahmad Faisal from Mercy Malaysia, that we have only a very narrow time frame for us to voice out our inspirations to the summit, because the 36th Summit will be held eventually next week on 26th of June. And we have to understand that for a particular statement to be notated by the leader, it has to follow certain procedures within the ASEAN Secretariat mechanism. It has to be discussed and deliberated thoroughly at the working group level, at the sub level, at the ministerial level, and then be elevated at the ASEAN Coordinating Councils before being brought up to the leaders for their notation. But I'm very supportive with this initiative, and I would like to offer you with another possible entry point for the CSOs to, to work closely with ASEAN. And as we already know that we already have this established mechanism in a form of the ATMER Partnership Group, the APG, and also the ACDM CSO Partnership Framework. Why don't we revitalize these two established mechanisms? Make it more optimum. We enhance the scope of the APG, enhance the TOR, enhance the memberships to also include other CSO or other partners that were not really involved in the previous stage of program implementations in the past. So I noted 2 points from this discussion: how the CSO would like to engage and contribute more at the regional context. So the first thing is, the ACDM, we have the ATMER work program. We have the ASEAN Agreement on Disaster Management and Emergency Response, ATMER, which was drafted in 2005, but then came into force in 2009. And we have the work program that was mainly, developed to facilitate the practical implementations of this agreement. And in all the previous work programs, the role of the civil society organizations was significantly articulated. Even under the current ATMER work program 2016-2020, we have provided a lot of spaces for the CSOs to contribute in the implementations of the work program. So it is just a matter for us to really understand what are the priorities of ASEAN, particularly for the disaster management sectors, to be in line with what can the CSOs support ASEAN in this endeavor. And also, as we are now entering the final year of the implementations of the current ATMER work program, I'm pleased to inform you that we are also currently undertaking a review on the lesson learned, on what went wrong, what went well on the implementations of this work program, including our engagement with the civil society organizations. It is unfortunate that we couldn't manage to have a physical consultations, because initially we planned to have, consultation, regional consultations involving the ASEAN Committee on Disaster Management, ACDM, and also the partners, including all ranges of CSOs, because we also want to hear from the CSOs what they want from ASEAN, what's the things that can be reflected in the new work program that can be supported better by the CSOs. So now, as we just concluded our consultation process with the member states, it is very heartening for me to witness that apparently the ASEAN member states, especially the NDMOs, they really want to have the CSO's role to be more enhanced and increased in the new work program 2021-2025. So this is a very good opportunity apparently for our colleagues to be able to support ASEAN in the next 5 years work plan. But the questions remain how best, we could have a platform that can facilitate these collaborations. So one of the suggestions also from the member state is to try to revitalize and resurrect the APG as well as the CDM CSO partnership framework to be more optimal. I would like to take reference of the ACDM collaborations with the other partners, for example, with the UN agency. We have the ASEAN UN Joint Strategic Plan of Actions on Disaster Management, or the ASEAN UN GSP-ADM, where we have identified relevant UN agencies to take the lead in each of the priority program of the ATMER work program. As you know, that the current ATMER work program, we have 8 priority programs, which encompass the whole stage of disaster management. We have a priority program on risk awareness, on build safely, on climate change, and ERR, on protect, on respond, recovery, and also knowledge and innovation management. So the UN agencies come up with identified list of UN bodies to take the lead in each of the priority program of the ATMER. That is also the thing that we want to see from the CSOs network. We want you to be collective. We want you to be unified, and then tell us which areas under this particular priority program that you can support, and we will be very happy to to have a more practical work plan that can be implemented in accordance to the framework that we already agreed in 2013, the ACPF. So I think the revitalizations of the APG and SCPF is important, but also I want to highlight that we have been intensively collaborating with the CSOs under different project and activities implemented under the current ATMER work program. To name a few, we have successfully implemented the ASEAN Safe School Initiative, the ASI, since 2014. This was also supported by Plan International, Mercy Malaysia, and range of CSOs. And this becomes one of the flagship program and initiative that was, repeatedly mentioned by the ASEAN Secretary General and also the ASEAN leaders in many occasions. this also showcase ASEAN's strong collaborations with the CSO. And we manage also, to have joint activities to showcase our collaborations at the different forum, at the regional and global forum. We managed to have a thematic sessions, pre-conference events at the ASEAN Ministerial Conference on DRR in Mongolia, and also at the global platform on DRR in Geneva. So that's the things that I would like to encourage, the CSOs in this region. Like, we are open to, to have this sort of collaboration, and in fact, we will be very happy to support. But I would like to also highlight the importance of thinking more longer term strategy. So rather than, having this statement or, or declarations or whatever it is being acknowledged at the ASEAN Summit, but then we will have, practical implementations after that. It would be best for us to start from, at the sectoral level. And it was proved that collaborations at the sectoral level was found to be more rewarding and more constructive in the implementation. I think that's sort of the overview from me as member of the ASEAN Secretariat. I'm open for further discussion. Puji, I can highlight a lot of successful collaborations with the CSO apparently, but this is being mindful with the time, and
Sure.
was happy to have more deliberations in this matters.
Excellent.
In the discussion. Thank you very much.
Bye, Dani. Thank you very much. So I guess our takeaway from here is that, as it was said by Dato Faisal, the door is open. That summit is not the last that we can count on. There is some more implementation-oriented engagement from here onward. But essentially, the bridge is there for us to cross, to work together, right? Now, before I move to the next speaker, I would like just to say hello to those colleagues who are joining in the Facebook Live. Good afternoon, and you could ask questions in the Facebook comments, and we hope to raise it here in the venue. Also, welcome to those who are joining through YouTube. Nowadays we could not dispense ourselves without engaging everybody. So, thanks to COVID-19, now everybody is on board. And we would like to make sure that this is accessible. Talking about accessibility, Sejajar has been running a meeting for about 14 weeks consecutively, and always with sign language interpreter for the sake of inclusiveness. However, today, for technical reason, we just could not make it. So I would like to apologize to our colleague from the deaf community for not being able to do it quickly. But we always try to do the best next time. On that, I would like now to move to Ms. Hoa, the Deputy Head of Oxfam in Vietnam, who is also the manager of the campaign in that office. I guess being, holding office in Hanoi, in Vietnam, where it is a chair of ASEAN today, it might bring some edge, it might give you some scope. But let's hear some of the introductory, briefing from Ms. Hoa on what civil society agenda and the larger ASEAN agenda for the summit and beyond. Ms. Hoa, if you please.
Hi, hello everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see you well.
Okay, yeah. And can you please show my PowerPoint, please? So on first slide. Yeah, so hello everyone again. I'm very happy to join the discussion today as part of the CSO, as a member of the CSO, Southeast Asia, and also very happy to join the discussion as a person coming from Vietnam in the role of, when the Vietnam government played the chairmanship of ASEAN in 2020. So I wouldn't be continue building on from what previous speakers talk about what would be what are the opportunities of engagement on the ASEAN, but maybe I would zoom in and bring a little bit more practical in a way of what would be the possible ways of engagement. What are the priorities of ASEAN when Vietnam in the chairs of ASEAN in 2020s? And I would also like to give a sense of an example of how CSO can be organized and work together, providing our engagement contribution and provide a suggestion to ASEAN during the time of COVID. Can I have slide 2? Yeah. So on this one, just give all of us a reminder on an overall picture, a big picture of what is the theme of ASEAN in 2020s. I think maybe what everyone, all of us knows all about it, but I just want to emphasize on the two themes of the ASEAN in 2020, that is cohesive and responsive. So in terms of the cohesive, what it means in ASEAN is to emphasize on the being a more unities and becoming more solidarities, not only in terms of economic integration, but also solidarity in terms of how ASEAN is raising the awareness and identities and the care in terms of the aspiration working toward a more people-centered community in ASEAN. And then the second part of the theme for ASEAN in 2020 is about responsive. So it's also asking ASEAN to be more responsive in a way of like creativities in terms of increasing responsive in the capacity of responding to the opportunity and also the challenges and also the risk such as COVID in 2020. Yes, that's a snapshot on the overall themes of ASEAN for this year in 2020. Can I have slide 3? On this, so as the chair of ASEAN in 2020, what are the Prime Minister's tiers when Vietnam took the 2020 ASEAN chairmanship? So it is a little bit unpacking a little bit more in terms of how Vietnam is going to take the leadership in 2020s. So under the theme that I have highlighted before, the Prime Minister steer all of the ASEAN organizations, committees in Vietnam to focus on 4 things. One is about ensuring the peace, stability, and solidarity. That will be the main purpose, identity, and overarching goal for the ASEAN community. And then the second one is about the connectivity. Also, it is very much about deepening the integration within and beyond the regions on the basis of innovation, stability, and growing in the next 3 years. And also the ASEAN community will also want to aim to achieve for the circular economy. It's talking about low carbon economy and every cycle. And next one is about the resilience. It is about building the economy and then the growth in ASEAN to be more resilient to climate change and also better manage of natural disaster, pollution, and plastic waste. And it also aims to have a stronger social welfare with high quality workforce in the digital area via quality education system and strategy for sustainable development opportunity for all. And finally is about ensuring effective operation or collaboration among ASEAN member states that can better serve the people. So those are the general steer coming from the Prime Minister of Vietnam. And for this one, I think I would like to, because our topic is talking about COVID. So with this, I would like to, I want to, yeah. For this slide, I would like to emphasize that COVID-19 has been becoming a driving factor for ASEAN to become a more united and caring ASEAN. That is also once again elaborate on the aspiration and also on the thematic of ASEAN in 2020s. So I took here some of the declaration that ASEAN has issued so far on the collective efforts and respond to a number of areas. For example, on 15 February 2020, the Vietnam government in the chair role have issued the chairman statement calling for the ASEAN collective response to the outbreak of COVID disease. And then later on, it is not stopped at the level of a chairman statement, and it's becoming an ASEAN leader declaration on measure to fight COVID-19 in 14 April, follow up an online special ASEAN Summit meeting on dealing with COVID. And then also the third one is very new, is on the 2nd of June, when there was an online discussions in early June. So ASEAN leaders also issue a joint statement resulting from an online ASEAN ministerial meeting on social welfare and development on ensuring social security, strengthening the resilience of the poor and vulnerable groups during and after COVID-19. Those are the those already declaration or joint statement coming from the ASEAN. So this is like showing commitment and the action from ASEAN community together what a more collective response to the COVID. And I put the last two slides on ongoing discussion, and it might be also the opportunity for us, our engagement in the coming time, focusing on the summit that will be happening next week. So one is about, I think there have been an ongoing discussion on the structuring the supply chain. So it's talking about the global supply chain, whether or not it will be happening like before, or whether or not it should be reorganized, and whether or not ASEAN can take the advantages. Can I still have the previous slide? Yeah, can I still have the previous slide? Yep. Whether or not the ASEAN can take the opportunity for the discussion and reorganization of restructuring the supply chains in the regions. So partly to recover the economy, and partly to improve the responsiveness to the future risks. And the last one, I think it is also a very hot debate and discussions on the why it is showing on the energy transition in the times of post-COVID. I think it's also becoming a very hot debate. So ensuring the transition of energy to be just and participatory in the post of COVID, and it also linked very much into the discussion of building back the economy and then the growth development in ASEAN. Yep. Can I have next slide? Yeah. So here I would like to give like to tell an example of how CSO and ASEAN investment during the times of COVID. So that is happened months ago. So it is not coming from a book, but it is coming from a collective efforts of the CSO in the region. So I think in the previous sharing, our speaker have highlighted on a number of different ways of engagement on ASEAN. But the example that I'm going to share now is also showing different ways of how CSO can work together and engage with ASEAN. And this is what an example about is CSO call for a united ASEAN to tackle COVID-19 pandemic. So a little bit on the background that the collective efforts have been organized among different countries in the ASEAN Asia region, and this work was built from a previous engagement, which I have mentioned earlier, like starting from a chairman statement on ASEAN collective response to the outbreak of COVID from 15 February, and we have identified there is an opportunity for the engagement on the upcoming of ASEAN Special Summit on COVID-19 on April. We are using the moment of the ASEAN Special Summit on COVID on 14 April as a special moment to offer specific to call for ASEAN to becoming more united and caring, tackling COVID. And then the second one is to offer the solution in terms of how ASEAN can become a more united in tackling COVID. So in terms of the strategy and approach, mainly on 3 things. And I remember by that time it happened in March and April, where many of us, for example, even our team was on confine, and we stay at home, but we still get connected. On one hand, we get used to with controlling and adapting the new way of living in the times of COVID. But on the other hand, we also go to very quickly organizing ourselves and discuss and picking up the opportunity to be more proposition and engaging with the ASEAN discussion. So in terms of the strategy, focus on 3 things. One is engaging with mass media via launching of an OS and is in country of ASEAN members through CSO. And then the second one is about running an online ASEAN campaign regionally. And then the third approach is sending advocacy letter to the leaders and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So for our team in Vietnam, for example, we, on behalf of the CSO, we also send the lobby letter to the Prime Minister in the chair role of ASEAN Special Summit on COVID-19. So we send that a letter to the Prime Minister in addition to the MOFA, in addition to other the colleagues coming from other countries. Yep. Next slide, please. Yeah. So what I would like to highlight here on this slide is about, I think it is also about one point that Ms. Itani has highlighted before, is about how we can contribute. No? We are not only talking about the statement, talking about the issue, but it's also about how we can offer the solution. So at that moment, we have been able to come up on specific action that ASEAN can do to strengthen the unity and calling for a holistic approach to tackle COVID-19. So I just base it here on a specific action, just to unpacking on how ASEAN together. And it's also emphasizing on the key message of ASEAN of leaving no one behind. Yep. Finally, the final slide. Yeah, and so on this, I would like to give an attention to the final columns where it is about the achievement. In addition to the achievement of the information is picked up widely by the mass media and also many interactions online. But I think a special achievement that we got, and we feel very happy with our contribution, is we got a letter of appreciation coming from Vietnamese government, responded to our lobby letter before, and the letter of appreciation coming from was sent from Vietnam ASEAN Department. In the letter of appreciation, I would like to highlight on 3 things. One thing is about the Vietnam government in the chair role of ASEAN acknowledged the contribution and recommendation on a united and holistic ASEAN approach to tackle COVID-19. And then the second one is confirming ASEAN united spirit and strengthen collaboration among ASEAN to tackle COVID. And to also see there is a joint statement. I think we contribute to it. No, we are not claiming that it is because of us, but we contribute to the success of that I mentioned before, is about the joint declaration on ASEAN. And then the third one is when I read the letter of appreciation, my reading is a kind of like welcoming, an open the stage for our participation. Please, they welcome the interest and contribution to build a united and caring ASEAN, cope with COVID, protect people health and well-being, and share responsibility. So it is like, for me, as I mentioned, I read it as an invitation for us, but it's also coming back again to Ms. Intani point that she raised before, is about how we can identify the opportunity and what we can do in the coming time. So maybe I would like to stop here and give it over back to Puji. I'm very happy to receive any kind of question or dialogue further later on.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wang. So that's sort of good news from Vietnam, closer to the chair over there, that the Vietnam, as the chair of ASEAN, is welcoming the idea of having a united and caring ASEAN, and within that context, CSO's contribution is being acknowledged and being accepted. So now the question is, what are we going to do about it, right? What I noted from that presentation is that we may like, as CSOs, write to the media and echo our voice in our respective countries and maybe regional publication as well. But also the scope for us to write to our Minister of Foreign Affairs and request the Minister of Foreign Affairs to pass on the voice in the form of intervention, for example, in the summit or beyond. Along that note, I would like to share with you, colleagues, at the end of this meeting, in case CSOs in ASEAN would like to approach their Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sejajar stands ready to pull together some bullet points, some thought behind it, and we could share it with you so that you could, work it further to spur your advocacy with your Minister of Foreign Affairs or to your media. So I would like to hear from you later in the discussion. With that presentation from Vietnam, this marked the end of the briefing segment of our conversation, and I would like to transition now to open discussion. But just before that one, if I may greet some colleagues in this meeting before I really open it to question and answer. Could I call on Ms. Victoria Saez Omenaka? Victoria, if you're in the room, could you raise your hand or could you make a sound? Victoria is the head of OCHA in Jakarta, but she's also the head of liaison with ASEAN. I guess it would be nice to hear what she has to say about the UN engagement, humanitarian community with ASEAN. Victoria, are you there?
Victoria is not here.
Okay. If Victoria is not there, because she promised that she would be here today. But anyway, now that, taking along that the door is open, for the engagement, the question is back to us what CSO is going to do. And the name of the ADMER Partnership Group has been mentioned several times. Maybe it's a time now for me to greet Dr. Heng from the Mercy Malaysia. I think it's more or less the captain of the APG of some sort, and knows inside out the history and the dynamics. Dr. Heng, if you'd like to share with us some of your perspective, please.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Good.
Yes, very well.
Now, I think there's been a lot of mention about the APG and the ACPF, and it's like a big mystery, but actually it isn't. And I'm giving this to you because I've been with the APG almost from the very beginning when it was formed. When ADMER was signed in 2010, the INGOs, some of the INGOs like Oxfam, SAVE, World Vision, Plan International, got together with Mercy Malaysia because we thought that it was a great idea of ADMER, a good legal document binding 10 ASEAN countries together to work together in disaster management, mitigation, and response. So these INGOs, including Mercy Malaysia, then got together and said, look, let's form this group called the APG in order to work and build up the ASEAN CSOs and also to work towards, the ADMER work program, getting all the CSOs working together towards the ADMER work program. So in the beginning, we called it the ASEAN Partnership Group. We call it the ADMA partnership group, and with great difficulty, we managed to get into an ACDM meeting and present ourselves. And then we were told that you couldn't use ADMA because it's ADMA, it's trademarked, and we were not recognized. So then we said, okay, we will change our name from ADMA Partnership Group to ASEAN Partnership Group. And then after a while, we were said, no, you can't, because the ASEAN is a copyrighted name. You can't use it either. So, but by that time, we had got very close and we had worked together with the ACDMs and all that. So they said, never mind, just call yourself APG. So it becomes, so we decided that, all right, just since we are known as APG, we'll call ourselves APG. The A can be anything. So, well, it could be an all partnership group. So we worked together and managed then to get this program out called the ACPF after having numerous discussions with the ACDMs. Now, the ACPF stands for the ACDM CSO Partnership Framework. That's what ACPF means. The idea of the ACPF then is that if you are an NGO in your country, then what you do is you talk to your ACDMs. And if your ACDMs think that you have the certain standard to represent your country, the ACDM then recommends you to be a member of the ACPF. So this is absolutely, so the ACPF is actually open. It depends on your country to recommend you into it. So initially when it started out, we had ACPF from Indonesia, from Thailand, from Myanmar, from Malaysia, from Singapore. There were no other ASEAN type NGOs from the other remaining countries to come into this. But anyway, it didn't matter because at that time we had enough funding from the European community. So we actually invited people from Brunei, from Laos, from Cambodia, from Vietnam as well, unofficially. Not recommended by the countries, but we recognized that there were some civil societies there. And we got together and we had meetings. And one of the things that came out was the ASEAN Safe School Initiative, for which we managed to work with the ASEAN Secretariat, to implement that. The other things that came out, of course, was the ASEAN Leadership, where we got people from government, from private sector, and from CSOs, and they went through 3 courses, 1 week each, on leadership training. The idea being that they would be trained, and at the same time, it was great networking that you had government people knowing, CSOs and knowing the private sector, so that if anything happens, 3 of you can actually work together. You can call each other up. You have the contacts. Wonderful. It was going very well. But the big thing is, all this was funded by the European community. Not a single cent came from ASEAN. And when I say funded, I mean airfare was paid for all meetings. Accommodation was paid for by all meetings. Allowances were paid for all meetings. So this went on when we still had money, when the European community still funded us. Our funding actually ended about 2 years ago. And because we had no money, and because there was none from ASEAN, actually, it's sort of taken a step backwards. I mean, it's something that we would like to open up again. I mean, the idea of the APG really is to encourage ASEAN CSOs, to be independent, to be empowered, and eventually take over the job of the APG. But unfortunately, because of these funding issues, because of CSOs sometimes rising, becoming very good, and then maybe sometimes the change of leadership, it goes down and it disappears.
Yeah.
So, we have this problem. And it's a start, but I think we should continue and we should carry on.
Okay.
That's one part on APG and ACPF.
Right.
The
Thank
other
you.
thing I want to talk about is actually working together in your own country. Working in your own country is not a problem. But if you want to work in another ASEAN country, as a CSO, you must have certain standards, right? I mean, I'm sure Indonesia will not allow a substandard NGO from another country to come in during an emergency response. So again, there has to be a certain standard, and this is where the ACPF comes in. And if this is recognized then throughout ASEAN, then if anything happens in Indonesia, Indonesia then will open its doors to all those ACPFs to come in and help. Now, this is a national policy again. So, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Dr. Heng, thank you very much. I guess it brings a bit of sense of reality and realism into the optimism that earlier we had, which is initiating something is one thing, but keeping it alive is another. Getting it funded is quite another, right?
Thank you.
Well, I would say, Dr. Heng, at least now, in the midst of COVID, now we don't have to go to KL to meet you. We can talk to Zoominar with the huge money. At least if there's anything, there's a blessing in this thing. So I think that's a good reality. But the point being that we take note of what you said now. The spirit is to reopen this, and by virtue of that, I think it's fair to say maybe it's a good time for me to check with the colleague CSOs in the room. Datuk Mustafa Man from Drug Prevention is here. And then colleague from CSR Network is here. From the migrants joining also this conversation. This is really cut across beyond disaster management as such. So at some point of this conversation, I would like to ask whether colleagues from CSO are interested to join in, or at least consider joining in to this talk with APG and get engaged with the program of the of ADMER and what's not. Okay. But now let me just stop there before I call upon other colleagues. Mas Dino and colleague from the Secretariat, is there any question from participants that come out in the chat box? If you could read
yes,
one of them, please.
Some participant is to Ibu Intan regarding the ASEAN bodies, etc. And one question also related to how inclusive ASEAN now means like to accommodate like the most vulnerable in the chat box. So maybe Bu Intan is relevant to answer this.
All right, Mbak Intan, you like to respond to that? How inclusive is ASEAN, at least in the spirit and the practice? Please take it up, Mbak Intan.
Thank you very much, Pak Puji and Mas Dino. Yeah, I just read the chat box and apparently most of the questions is addressed to ASEAN. Thank you very much. It shows, like how eager our colleagues to, really engage with ASEAN. Before I answer the questions related to inclusivity, I want to also touch on issues with regards to cross-sectoral cooperation. One of the colleagues asked about how ASEAN Secretariat can facilitate the cross-sectoral collaborations. So the SCDM is after the endorsement of the ASEAN declarations on One ASEAN, One Response. the ACDM managed to establish what we call the Joint Task Force on HADR, on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Because we learned from the Typhoon Haiyan in 2013, we did after action review. Ibu Adelina is here. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Ibu. Where they acknowledge that disaster management cannot work alone. It has to be disaster relief and disaster management has to be cross-cutting issues and have to engage other sectors in this process. So that's why we facilitate the establishment of the Joint Task Force on Humanitarian Assistance and Disaster Relief, which comprise of sectoral bodies from health division, disaster management, political, defense, and social welfare. So we managed to convene a regular meeting under this ambit of this JTF on HADR, and we discussed lots of cross-sectoral initiatives and activities also under this platform. But if I want to cascade it down at the SCDM level, the SCDM has a working group, has different, 5 different working groups on our risk assessment and awareness, on prevention and mitigation, on preparedness and response, recovery and knowledge and innovation management. Every SCDM working group meeting always have an open session, and this is open for partners, like all partners. So we provide an opportunity for partners to present and also to discuss, to have a direct interface with the SCDM members during the open session. We also have a regular ASEAN Partnership Conference where we invite our partners and also other partners to really, update the SCDM on what are the areas of activities that the partners are currently undertaking and how this will be beneficial to support the ASEAN Work Program and to support the SCDM. So yes, the SCDM is in a very good position to facilitate this cooperation through this various platform that I already mentioned. And also we have established, what we call the platform with ICRC. We have this regular ASEAN ICRC platform also to discuss particular issues on humanitarian assistance. We are working now to establish the same platform with the IFRC. And that can be also a very good opportunity that can be considered by the CSOs, whether the CSO would like to also engage the CDM through the establishment of this particular platform. Second thing, with regards to inclusivity, I think it's already clearly mentioned, in the ASEAN Vision on Disaster Management ASEAN 2025 ASCC blueprint that ASEAN is envisioned to be a dynamic, resilient, and inclusive, people-centered society. So this is actually already in our DNA, if I may say. And most of the activities also under the disaster management, we are trying to push for social inclusions and people's participations in this endeavor. I want to give you an example that in 2018, the ACDM, initiated a concept or a proposal that aimed to mainstream gender in disaster management, in particular on disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. It was quite challenging at the time because in the current ASEAN Work Program, there was no specific clause that mentioned about gender mainstreaming. I have to admit that. So upon the consultations with relevant partners, the ASEAN Secretariat then come up with this proposal to be discussed at the SCDM meeting, and it was endorsed by the meeting by the SCDM that yes, SCDM agreed that ASEAN should take this gender mainstreaming initiatives, one step ahead. And this is also the spirit that we want to bring in drafting the new ASEAN Work Program in 2021-2025 to be more inclusive and to be more engaged. So I think ASEAN is, sorry, I'm trying to, maybe Mas Dino can help me because I saw a lot of questions, but I'm having difficulty in tracing that.
Yeah, Bu Intan, one more thing, a question from the participant from Loy, how we can mobilize the money from ASEAN countries to support any kind of initiative for instance, like Safe School Initiative, whatever. Maybe we can have kind of yeah, lesson learned on.
Okay. When it comes to funding support, it's always a challenging things. You know, I mean, like I have to say that a lot of activities being implemented under the current ASEAN program is also very much donor driven. So once the funding stops, then you know the sustainability of this project or activities are also in question. But again, because ASEAN Secretariat sits in a very strategic position, we have a direct, you know, like a direct engagement with the dialogue partners. We have a regular meeting with them, so we can become, you know, we can bridge these gaps. I have been working very closely with colleagues from the ASEAN project management team, and we even like draft the concept note together. And ASEAN Secretariat bring this concept to different dialogue partners seeking for their support. But again, you know, like I would like to see also that the CSOs and other partners that want to engage with ASEAN Secretariat, who wants to support us in the implementations of the ASEAN program, would be able to have, you know, a sustainability in terms of funding and also manpower. I have been also working with some members of the APG, trying to, you know, get the funding and support for the continuations of this APG and the SCPF since 2019. So those kind of things, I mean, like if that was communicated well to the ASEAN Secretariat, especially to the respective desk officer or respective divisions, then we will be able, you know, to support you. But we will not be able to, you know, request for contributions from the ASEAN member states for this. So it has to be, the activities or project has to be aligned with the ASEAN work program for us to be able to, you know, seek support from our dialogue partners, from the donors, and if possible also to get endorsement from the ACDM to utilize a small portion under the ADMER fund to support on this initiative. But I don't recommend that to be, you know, I don't want to set a precedent that this will be a good practice that the CEOs would like to, you know, to take into consideration.
Okay, excellent. Now, before I pass it on to the next question, since Ibu Lina is here, she has the, I am very hesitant to call you a veteran in ASEAN, but you have been there for a long time. So the always fresh Ibu Adelina, maybe have one word or two to add into that explanation from Intani and from Dr. Heng. Particularly from AHA Center's perspective, engagement with CSO. What is your interest there, Ibu Lina?
Thank you very much, Dr. Puji, and thank you very much for involving me again in the discussion with the ASEAN Civil Society Network. I was part of the first Zoominar, and I also was one of the colleagues who suggested the reactivation of the ACPF, the ACDM's CSO partnership framework. Okay, I cannot see, it's kind of weird to see me in a large screen, so I put it in a tile format. It's less
you're sort of enjoying looking at yourself on the screen, do you?
I know. So now it's in the tile format. It's much easier for me to interact with you. So first of all, yeah. Well, apart from Dr. Heng, perhaps I'm one of the living witnesses to the creation of the APG. I was there in the room where colleagues from the APG met with the former Dr. Surin Pitsuwan, the former SG, Dr. Surin Pitsuwan, rest in peace. And the civil society colleagues at that time, APG members basically challenged Dr. Surin how the civil society and the members of the network could contribute to the ASEAN Charter, to make ASEAN Charter more people-centered. But that was like 10 years ago. That was when I was with the ASEAN Secretariat, and now I'm with the AHA Center. Just to answer the question, one of the question before, how inclusive we can get in ASEAN, within the ASEAN family. I think I must say that disaster management is the most inclusive sector in ASEAN when it comes to engagement of the civil society. And I can say that because I have been with the ASEAN family for over 20 years. And the doors are open, like what Dr. Faisal said. It's just how we can actually make use of these doors and the windows and make these windows and the doors larger and utilize the entry points and the opportunities that have been given. So Intani already mentioned, okay, one entry point would be the planning, the planning and the development of the new ATME work program, and also the implementation. Perhaps this is one of the most immediate opportunity that our friends in the civil society can utilize. How you can contribute to the planning and implementation of the ATME work program. ASEAN Secretariat is the process owner. Intani is in charge of gathering inputs from the ASEAN member state as well as the sector and stakeholders for the implementation of ATME work program. So, and I know, being part of the development of the work program in the past, that civil society will also be engaged in the development of the new ATME work program. Second, the other inclusive platform that actually I mentioned during the first Zoominar is the One ASEAN One Response Declaration. And that the AHA Center has been assigned as the primary regional coordinating agency under the One ASEAN One Response. And the concept of One ASEAN One Response is the inclusivity, basically. And when it comes to ASEAN, it's not only the government, but also the civil society, the private sector, the academic institution, and other government sectors, not only disaster management sector. And One ASEAN One Response is being operationalized by AHA Center. And we have actually some windows and doors open. For example, the ASEAN Emergency Response and Assessment Team, ERAT. We have been inviting members of APG to participate in the ERAT. But to tell you the truth, it has been difficult for us to mobilize ERAT members from the civil society in actual deployment. We have the members trained in our curriculum, but to deploy them is another ball game. So why don't we utilize this opportunity, having the members in ERAT deployable, and having the commitment to be deployed in actual emergencies. We have engaged, for example, civil society in the ASEAN Joint Disaster Response Planning. So we have the ASEAN standby arrangement. And Mercy Malaysia is the only civil society registered by a government, that is Malaysia, to become part of the ASEAN standby arrangement from Malaysia. I would love to see the other civil society in ASEAN countries to be registered as part of the ASEAN standby arrangement. So when it comes to a contribution of asset and capacities, we have not only from the government, but from the civil society sector. Now, while the Mercy Malaysia asset and capabilities are registered by Malaysian government in our standby arrangement, I think we don't have yet the opportunity to mobilize them. But there is already a framework, actually, a plan of action and a SOP, how to mobilize the capacity of and the asset of civil society in a coordinated manner under One ASEAN One Response. So that these are some of the entry points, and perhaps what we can do after this is really to sit down together between the civil society network and the ASEAN family, AHA Center, ASEAN Secretariat, ACDM, to see what actually are the other entry points that we can utilize for the implementation of the ATME work program, as well as One ASEAN One Response. So that also brings me to the second point, Pak Puji. It takes two to tango. It's a love affair between the two. It cannot be just one side is strong, the other side should also be strong, right? And what I mean is the government and non-government sector. I would like to suggest as one of the first steps is to resurrect, that's the word of Intani, or reactivate the ACP efforts. In Indonesia, we have Sejajar, for example. That can be the network of Indonesian CSO for Indonesia. How about Malaysia? We have Mercy Malaysia, we have other civil society. Can the Malaysian CSO get together first, and then Philippines, and then Singapore, and so on and so forth. why it is important for the civil society within the ASEAN countries to organize themselves first, because we need to know who that we can contact, right, as the focal point. For sure, we cannot liaise and establish network with everyone. There has to be a network coordinator. And like what Dr. Heng said, how about start reorganizing ourselves within the respective ASEAN countries, and then have some kind of a focal point or a network coordinator that we can liaise with in terms of preparedness program, prevention, mitigation program, as well as the One ASEAN One response implementation. Third point that I would like to highlight to you, I think we have been talking about the existing platform entry points, doors within the disaster management community, but the question remains how wide you want to go. The discussion so far has been on COVID-19 response. When it comes to COVID-19 response, the mechanism within ASEAN, as mentioned by Intani, the lead sector is not the disaster management sector. The lead sector is the health sector. For natural disaster, is clear. For One ASEAN One response, the primary regional coordinating agency for disaster management is AHA Center under the declaration on One ASEAN One response. And we are the one assigned by the ASEAN leaders to operationalize One ASEAN One response, engaging with the civil society, the private sector, and so on and so forth. Clear for natural disaster. But for health, we are not the coordinator. AHA Center is not the coordinator. It's the health sector. So I think within the ASEAN structure and ASEAN family, this will have to be clarified first. For us right now, what we are trying to do is to provide a support role to the lead sector in ASEAN and to the ASEAN leaders, not to coordinate. Until a certain point that that role may change, we don't know. Okay, so back to you, Pak Puji.
Okay, there you go. We have a variety of input from colleagues here. I have several people to greet before I move to the next question, if you like. Do I have Dao Pansi Tuntain from Myanmar? Dao Pansi, are you there?
Yeah, hi.
There you go. We sort of miss you. We miss your voice and your look.
Okay, can you see
I would like
me?
to offer you a minute or two for you to pass on. What's your take of this conversation? I was wondering if we should pick up what Ibu Adelina was saying. Maybe we should step forward, be part of this ASEAN platform. Sejajar and LRC, for example. So, what do you have to say about this?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be able to join this second session. Actually, I learned a lot today from various, colleagues, and to learn a lot about all these ASEAN program, and also to learn about this APG program. This is something that I knew a little bit about, but I was not aware of exactly what it does and how it has happened. So we're very, very happy, and I am so grateful that a lot of people have shared their experiences. And here we do have a very good opportunity to partner further with a regional entity such as the ASEAN, because especially for COVID response, we are doing a lot at the local level, at the national level. And so it's about time that we reach out and partner with our regional colleagues. So here we're very, very happy again to say that we have the opportunity, and to also to say that on behalf of the Local Resource Center in Myanmar, that we actually are very, very happy if we would be provided with the opportunity to join the APG. So here I would also say that we are ready to join hands together and let us move forward to meet the challenges of this COVID pandemic. Yeah, and also may I take this opportunity to introduce my deputy.
There you go.
Nini.
Hi everyone. Good to see you. I'm Nini from Local Resource Center, Myanmar. and I
Welcome.
have known some colleagues here.
He's
Thank
very
you, and
active
welcome.
in ASEAN, so he knows quite a lot of people who are here in this meeting. So thank you all, and Dr. Puji, nice to see you again. Thank you.
Kachu Temare. That's
Yes,
a thank you
Maris.
in Burmese.
Thank you.
Dr. Heng, you're stepping out from here. I'll tell him again later. But now we have Sejajar and LRC of Myanmar is stepping forward as a member. I was wondering if other colleagues would like to join in this thing. I'll call upon some more. But anyway, Dr. Heng is on the phone. I'll call him a bit later. Colleagues, before I move to the next question, I would like to get you back to the Mentimeter. Mastino, I will share my screen, please.
Please,
I would like you to go back to the Mentimeter, and then please tell us how do you like to move forward from here. You have several choices. You can choose any. One, I want to have bullet messages for our foreign ministry in case your CSO would like to pass on message to them. Two, I want key messages to communicate to our media. This is what suggested by Ms. Hoa from Oxfam, Vietnam. Three, I want my CSO to be member of ASEAN platform. Four, I want to participate in the next similar Zoominar, which is the easiest part. And the fourth, I want to be involved in the next disaster programming. Which one do you like? There you go. 13 colleagues. Most of you say that you want to be part of the ASEAN platform of some sort. Some of you would like to be involved in the disaster programming. I guess it's going to take some time for you to get in, but let me talk you through of what we learned from colleagues just now. Ms. Hoa said that as much as the summit is going on next week, you still have a chance to talk to your Minister of Foreign Affairs, to do interventions during the summit, to get your point across. And, you know, we could provide you, or we could craft together offline some bullet points for you to consider. In such case, you could contact us, or we can contact you and offer you those bullet points. Ms. Hoa also said that part of the strategy is for CSO to reach out to the media and to voice out our concern. The third one is taking the offer from Dr. Faisal, from Dr. Heng, for us to be involved from Mbak Intan and Ibu Adelina to resurrect, to reinvigorate the ASEAN platform where we can engage, or simply to be involved in the seminar next time, or to be involved in the next disaster programming. I will leave you with that, then I'll revisit this before I close the meeting later. Now I'll go back to the room. And Dr. Heng, while you step out, I would like to inform you that Ms. Dao Pansi Tuntain from Local Resource Center in Myanmar said that she's prepared to step forward with Sejajar to be a member of APG, or to be involved with APG. So at least two of us now will be, you know, joining you in the next conversation. And I'm waiting for other colleagues to step forward as well. Okay, on that, Mastino, is there any question from the or YouTube?
So far, there is no questions. Mas Fahmi can be also added if any, but there is also questions in the chat box in Zoom that they ask how to be accredited as CSO to the ASEAN. So maybe Bu Adelina or Ibu Intan is relevant to this.
All right. Any one of either by Intan or Ibu Adelina would respond? What I know is there is a document on CSO's engagements from ASEAN that tells you, you know, what kind of NGOs you are, how to get accredited, and so on. That's one. Number two, there's also apprehension. colleagues. This is not easy and sailing smoothly. The fact that the NGOs need to be endorsed by government before you become anything in ASEAN. This is from colleague from human rights sectors. Then if you are talking against your government to the extreme, or you're being disliked by your government, or you're not recognized or invisible to your government, you will not get the endorsement. You'll never be part of ASEAN platform. That's the apprehension that we learned from colleagues from human rights at least and environment. But let's go back to the one who is in the business. Mbak Intan or Ibu Adelina, you like to shed some light on this question?
Perhaps Ibu Adelina can share. I mean, like from ASEAN Secretariat, yes, whatever CSOs that ASEAN would like to engage has, to fulfill the requirement as stipulated in the ASEAN Charter.
Mm-hmm.
So it must support the visions of ASEAN, the objective of ASEAN, and this must be endorsed, if I may say, by the respective government.
There you
but
go. I think that fact alone put us into some sort of dichotomy, right? By nature, the CSOs might not always on the same line with the state, ideologically speaking. Sometimes they're on different views. So this kind of CSOs and running the risk of not being able to be endorsed by the government. That's one situation. But I think by rights, as Mbak was saying, the ASEAN Charter is saying subscription to the ASEAN values and objectives and being endorsed by the member states. Ibu Adelina, you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I have not been with the ASEAN Secretariat for 4 years. So perhaps Intani is actually better in terms of providing the rules and procedures.
Well, this rules has not changed for a long time. Yeah.
I'm looking at the website. Yeah, and actually it's available there. There is a web page under ASEAN Secretariat talking about how entities can associate themselves with ASEAN. There is a rules of procedure and criteria for engagement for entities associated with ASEAN. Mm-hmm. And also guidelines on accreditation of CSOs. There you go, 2012. Yeah, it has not been perhaps changed since then. What I know is that apart from adhering to the principles and vision of ASEAN, I think there are also one of the items saying that it has to be indigenous. It has to be ASEAN born. Yeah. Because I think there was an effort by APG to basically apply for accreditation as one of the ASEAN entities. But because only one is ASEAN board, Malaysia, then I guess that kind of like, well, they're not eligible per se. But ACPF may actually be eligible because ACPF are ASEAN-born CSOs. Yeah. There is also another thing though. While I was with the ASEAN Secretariat, I learned that not all of the entities associated with ASEAN and not all CSOs accredited to ASEAN are actually active. Yep. Some actually are not active. So, it depends. You want to have a valuable engagement or just recognize or both. We can start with by having valuable engagement first and then getting recognized later on. That can also be, and that actually has been the path taken by APG in the past and the ACPF. And the recognition later came from a sectoral body, that is the ACBM.
No, I think part of the irony is those who are accredited are not always active and not always relevant. I'm not criticizing, but if you are the ASEAN Association of Makeup Artists, for example, I'm sure it's very important. No, I'm not making joke about it. There are such kind of association and they're accredited in ASEAN, and yet Effie was saying in the chat box, Indonesia is so large. We have what 260 million people. There are thousands of NGOs. Not many of them are recognized by government, and yet they have something to say. So I guess my take is like what Ibu Lina said. We work first in many different ways, get recognition later. That's one avenue. or we pursue the accreditation first and then start talking. At the midway of that is Dr. Faisal's wisdom that he shared with us. My organization may not have direct voice to the ASEAN leaders, but I happen to know and get acquainted with Mercy Malaysia, who has access to the leaders. On the basis of solidarity and being civil society, I trust that my voice will be represented by Mercy Malaysia to the ASEAN leaders. But that will not happen if we don't talk to one another. That is for sure. So I guess my tip will be the first step to that is for us to continue talking like this through Zoominar or otherwise, build coalition, build some sort of platform among us, and then rolling from there. Very good, colleagues. That's that part of the conversation. I would like you to take you back to what we get from the feedback so far. Out of 32 people, more than half would like to be part of the ASEAN platform one way or another. That's the feedback that I get. I'll keep it open until the closing of the conversation. Let me then now call Brother Alisan. Are you still there?
Yes.
Martino. Okay, Brother Alisan is here, standing on behalf of Datuk Dr. Denison. Datuk Dr. Denison happened to be from Malaysia. Everybody's from Malaysia today. I don't know why. Maybe it so happened. But Datuk Denison is from the CSO SDG Alliance of Malaysia. I just want to show you, colleagues, that the issue of COVID, it's so much broader than disaster management and disaster response, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
It touches the economy, it touches the health, it touches the energy even. So I guess it has something to do with SDGs, and I think it's only proper that we get the CSO SDG Alliance to share with us some thoughts. And maybe a pointing question to Bang Alisan. Take back to your house. Would you like to be part of this APG eventually? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but please share with us some of your thoughts about this SDG relation, Bang Alisan, please.
Thank you, Pak Puji, and greetings from Malaysia. I think you hit the nail on the head there. That when you talk about COVID-19, when you talk about many development issues nowadays, they are very interlinked. So we need to look at it from a broader perspective. So as you mentioned, I'm representing CSO SDG Alliance. We are a network of CSOs that are working on the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm sure all of you are familiar with it by now. And we have a network of NGOs that span various issues, including economic, social, and environmental issues. And I think from our, I would say, work from COVID-19 response, as many as you can imagine, that a lot of it has to do with the recovery, with the socioeconomic impacts of COVID-19. So what happened is we investigated a lot of impacts at the ground level of COVID-19, and as you know, it's not just a health issue. It began as a health pandemic, but a lot of those issues became very much development issues. So we've got, due to the lockdowns, people, for example, that are daily wage earners, people from the informal economy, etc., that are most impacted by the lockdowns itself of COVID-19. So in this sense, I think many have mentioned that earlier, we use the SDGs framework to address many of these wider development issues that are often interlinked. And I think COVID-19 has really demonstrated how important that is, and civil society as a network play an important role on this. And this is from our research that we have taken as part of the CSO SDG Alliance has demonstrated that a lot of issues on the ground, while not to be simply critical to government agencies have their mandates. So when many of these issues are cross-cutting, etc., sometimes they fall outside of government mandates. In this sense, CSOs can play a large role because CSOs are driven by norms. In our case, they are driven by goals, which is the Sustainable Development Goals and cross-cutting goals, SDGs. So in that sense, I want to address some of the things that really resonate with us, which many have brought up, including Ibu Adelina just now, is that due to that, we know that we need a network to address these interlinked issues. I think for the first time in Malaysia, I would say that Of course, there's been attempts before, but for the first time, we have a really coherent network that consists social, NGOs working on social issues, NGOs working on environmental issues, and NGOs working on various local issues under the same framework. And this brings to the issue of the importance of the network of networks. Now, as you can imagine, I think Ibu mentioned this, to coordinate such a vast network is not such an easy undertaking. So we had to organize our networks in terms of, for example, we have leads in terms of issues that are related to the social issues. We have leads on those working on economic issues. We have leads on those working on environmental issues and so on. So what we can offer is that we can utilize and tap into our network how we organize it into to address the different issues depending on how relevant they are. So even when we talk about COVID-19 as a response, it may be the economic recovery. So we can tap into some of our networks that work on issues such as unemployment, etc. It could be health, it could be social social insurance, social protection, and so on. So I think in that sense, I completely agree. There needs to be a network at the country level.
More conversation, cross-sector, essentially, right?
Yes, there needs to be that cross-fertilization. And I would say also we have learned a lot from each other. So it's a learning process as well. Learn so much, for example, when we talk about human rights, we have got one environment and environmental NGOs working with human rights NGOs, and we have strengthened our response to, for example, indigenous peoples who are forest dwellers because of this kind of network. So I think a lot of things can emerge through closer collaboration. And with that, I would say we have been engaging with our partners on the APG, etc. And so far, it's been positive. But as you know, networks will have to await confirmation. But provisionally, we stand ready to support this initiative.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Good, Dr. Heng, you have another network who is keen to explore the possibility of joining hand with you all. It may not offer direct solution, but it provides reference to cross-sectoral. We can talk, cross the so on. Now, I'd like to call upon Dr. Mong Mong Win. Dr. Kin Mong Mong Win, are you still online? Dr. Kin Mong Win.
Thank you. You hear me?
Yes. You said in your comments that you have been part of the APG, but you sort of losing touch with them. Could you just tell us briefly what happened?
We were working with APG for quite a few years earlier, but the APG was certainly was not functioning very much. So I approached several times with the Master Malaysia, and they know me very well. And also during the other ASEAN meetings, we talked to the ASEAN Secretariat to, we have a civil society network, Myanmar NGO network, Myanmar Consortium for DRR network, and we are all together. And we were part of the APG, and we have some functioning. At that time, the World Vision was helping us. But now we don't have anybody to link with them. So, we have a civil society here are ready and working, and even many of the ASEAN meetings attending there. But we would like to reiterate it and partner with the APG. We are here. We are ready to do, and we have all the partners, members of CSO and you are ready to work with it. But we would like to have a linkage.
Yeah,
we are not
communication,
asking for the money. We are asking for collaboration, working together, and how to share the information. So that is what we are here. But nobody communicating us for quite a long time.
Well, so Dr. Win, listen, don't despair now, because you are part of the circle. I'm going to call you. You are not alone. Okay. So let's rekindle this. Let's reinvigorate this the spirit of the COVID. We can talk without traveling. So make sure that you leave your number and contact with us, and I will chase you so that we can talk some more. Okay.
Okay, very much.
Excellent.
We are ready.
Now, welcome. Now, I would like to call. I'll get to you, Dr. Heng. Ping Peria from CRIs. Ping, you have some idea to offer to the group. Go ahead.
I'd like to pick up on what Alisan said, that perhaps because I've been listening to the discussion and most of the inputs come from the disaster management, it's good. But I think if you go by the ASEAN's leader statement in April, as what Alisan said, there are a lot of other aspects that needs to be also addressed. And it's a good starting point that you have started this, but I think there are other sectors, other groups, other platforms, as Dr. Faisal said, that can also play a role. That's why I think my earlier question targeted to Ibu Intani is how may those other sectors in various ASEAN sectoral bodies to be open up. But I think her answer is that it is up to its CSO grouping in that particular network to play a role. But I think Sejajar, having started this, being the network of networks, I think the way forward is to organize it by as what Alisa said, by sector like environment, agri, like CRIs can work for agri and environment. And we are also an ASEAN accredited CSOs, but we do not know how to play a role, no? And work with other similar accredited CSOs so that our effort will be maximized. So that will be all. Thank you, Puji.
Excellent pick. No, I think clearly this kind of platform is nice. It's cross-sector. You know, we don't have to be very formal. You can share chismis with me. All right. I can share chismis with you. All right. Chismis is a gossip in Filipino language. And many of those could crystallize to become version that could be uplifted to a formal channel. Start with a friendship like this. No, Pink? You agree with me? Okay.
Thank you very much for starting this.
Cheers. Also, don't forget to leave your number and your chat box so that I can chase you also. I don't know. We should have some nickel together, brother. Eh?
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Heng, you're about commenting to Dr. Win intervention. You have to unmute yourself. Pass.
It's okay. I'm fine. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. All right.
I was just saying hello to him. I haven't seen him for a long time. That's all.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. All right. Excellent. All right, colleagues. I guess that's that. This is already 4:21 in my on my clock. Let me just wrap up with several takeaways. Number one, and you can add me on that. Number one, the government of Vietnam as a chair has demonstrated openness to help CSOs engagement in the summit or otherwise, but more of it has to be pushed from our side, right? We have our colleagues in Oxfam who have an open channel to communicate some of our concern, if you like, if we can formulate some of those concerns together. Number two was the suggestion for us to continue having this kind of conversation. It may not be gelling into something formal, but we can keep talking like this until it gel into something that's more pointing, just to keep this cross-sectoral going. Number three, my take is that colleagues from APG, from ACPF, from ASEAN are opening the opportunities for us to step in and work with them. All right, and so far I've noted that Sejajar, the CSO SDGs Alliance, and LRC in Myanmar, at least the three of these step forward and would like to consider further how we can have that conversation with APG. Fourth one is that in line of the advocacy of our points with regard to COVID, some of you stated that, and also picking up from Ms. Hua's message from Hanoi, you may like to communicate with your media. So it will be a good start if we could put some bullet point and we share with you. If you leave your contacts with us or through our contacts, we can pass it on to you as a starter, as a thinker. And then number five, Intan was sharing with us that Intani from ASEAN Secretariat was sharing, and also Ibu Adelina, there's going to be a process in front of us, including the formulation of the work program in which there will be space for CSO to give inputs, and we would like to seize that opportunity also to give input, right? And along that line, a colleague from ICFA is there to facilitate the connection with other colleagues in the region and also some of the pointed program from ICFA. Some of my take, and I'll add some more if there is. I would like now to go to like half minutes round table to the speakers if they're still here or their representative, so that we can wrap up this conversation. Can I call upon first Jingrui, your closing statement? Anything
Yeah.
that's pleasant to us, huh?
Thank you very much, Puji. I think it's a very fruitful discussion. So to be very short, I really wanted to highlight 3 messages. Actually, you already highlighted, but I wanted to highlight again. Is first what Dr. Faisal of course brought up, NGO to be really inclusive to themselves as well, to each other as well. If you want to join the platform, maybe one way to consider is to link up with your own network in the country, and to start from there. And also, message also very clear from AHA and from ASEAN that are revitalizing the existing structure. So we needed to consider and discuss about a coordinated way to do that. And then the third message is that our own accountability and a responsibility is equally important to make ourselves, reliable and trusted partner to all. And then the last but not least, taking the advantage as being the observer to APG, I would say, yeah, we would definitely, taken this back to APG and discuss, especially, already the willingness to join APG has expressed, in the meeting. So we will, seriously discuss about it and move it forward. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Now, can I call Mbak Ama if she is still there? Mbak Ama, are you there?
Yes. Yeah, I'm still here.
Ah, there you go. Because
yeah,
I saw
sorry,
your
I
screen some other characters coming out. It's not you, someone else.
My
please.
sister, I just got a visit.
See?
Okay,
Okay, please, your closing statement.
Yes, I would also support the highlight about the revitalizing the current structure and mechanism of APG. So as you mentioned, Sejajar would love to engage in the regional level to also contribute the role of CSO in the region. And then I would also highlight about the localization. This is a good way of, also highlighting the importance of the subnational level. Because with the COVID, you stay at home, like what Dr. Faisal as well mentioned, localization become crucial, especially for the countries like Indonesia and the Philippines, because the archipelago country. So the subnational level would be very crucial in responding any humanitarian need, not only humanitarian but also development. And the third one, I guess that this forum could be extended in terms of not only for COVID, but it could be for the DRM, the disaster risk reduction or development in general. I guess so. That's my take.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibu Ama. Now, I would like to call on Dr. Faisal, if he is still there. Doctor, are you still here? If not, that I would call upon Dr. Heng, if you would like to offer some, last remarks of the session. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There you go. That's good to go now.
All right, good. I'm sure whatever I say will be what Dr. Faisal will say anyway, right? We have been together for so long. No, the important thing about this is, of course, localization. If you have anything, it's local people that's going to respond to you first. So let's focus a lot on localization. Because of COVID, we now have this, right? But I think you got to understand that ADMA, the idea of ADMA really is the ASEAN Agreement on Disaster Management and Emergency Response. So hopefully COVID will disappear, hopefully within a year when there's a vaccine that is formed. But the big long-term thing is actually disaster management and emergency response, which happens every year a few times in all countries. So let's again, and perhaps, you know, with the number of CSOs, the focus, I think we have to focus, all right? If you're doing development, focus on development. If you're doing this, do, you know, focus on that. Otherwise, it gets terribly, terribly mixed up, and it becomes very, very difficult to, you know, advocate any policy. Thank you.
Okay, that's a good reminder, as always, from Dr. Hang. Now, I would like to call upon Mbak Intan, if you have a last word, last message, last wisdom, hindsight, anything you haven't said yet. Mbak Intan, please.
Thank you, Pak Puji. Just a very brief, closing statement. That I'm very much, delighted to see the request and also the interest from the CSO colleagues to participate and to get more engaged with ASEAN. So let's rest assured that ASEAN Secretariat will stand ready to facilitate, and the most immediate, engagement will be to engage the CSOs in the consultation process for the development of the new admirable program. So we will be working with our consultant team. We have CSOs as one of our stakeholders to be interviewed and consulted. Perhaps this will be taken into a form of sending out questionnaires to our CSOs network to also get their views and feedback on their ongoing cooperation with ASEAN and also their hope and expectations for the next 5 years.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Very good. On that, colleagues, Sejajar is not even, trying to replace anything. We're just complementing or filling the void during the COVID season. So if anything, Mbak Intan would like to share, based on this list that people participating, we will be more than happy to pass it around. Taking the risk of cross communication, I think should be, Dr. Heng, it's good to have duplication rather than omission, right? There you go. All right, and I would like to call on Miss Hua if she's still there. Chị Hua ơi. I'm calling her in Vietnamese even. Okay, it's not there. Colleagues, with that, let me try to see what the other side gonna look like. Okay. I just would like to show you your return on our quick survey. Out of the question, what is it that you want to take forward? Most of you are saying that you would like to be part of the ASEAN platform. So as Ping was suggested, we'll continue spreading the word around. Let it be very fluid, but get everybody to have a conversation. Most of that. Second, by Intan, more people are interested to join the next programming, to keep them informed of your information. Some colleagues would like to have some bullet point to be passed on to Minister of Foreign Affairs on their countries, and then the list would be interested in the media, and very less would like to join the next meeting. That's very disappointing. But Ms. Hua, you're back. We sort of missing you. We would like to give you a last, message before we go. Over to you, please. You have to unmute yourself. Your speaker. Microphone. I still cannot hear you. Something like unmute. A colleague from operator, can you unmute Ms. Hua, please?
She is already unmute, Pak. Maybe
Okay.
she has trouble with her speaker, maybe.
Well, Ms. Hua, we cannot hear you. Obviously, we can see you. Well, that's too bad, isn't it? But look, we would like to thank you for sharing the message. But listen, before we go away, we will send you some bullets that you like to whisper to your foreign affairs for the summit, okay? With that, pass on the message later, and we'll like to share it. Colleagues, with all the speakers, I would like to thank you all for sticking around. More than 100 people are saying for 2.5 hours, which is extraordinary. Dato Mustafa Aman, thank you for staying with us. For everyone else, I would like to look forward to meeting you in about 2 weeks from now with other topics. Most likely will be a report from the outcome of the summit. And I would like to discuss with you what's the implication on CSOs. What the summit has to do with our next life. That will be my next proposed topic. And would like to have Ms. Hua also to give us very, private and personal briefing of what's going on in the summit and what are the message in between the lines that has implication on CSOs, right? And for Ms. Intani, we look forward to receiving more information for you about the ADMER work program. And for Ibu Adelina, stick around and don't abandon us yet. Okay. And for everyone else, thank you very much. Dr. Heng, please pass on our respect and regard to Dr. F. And I will see you all. If you are Muslim, I would like to close this with Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me thank the technical people behind the screen, Dino, Fahmi, Siti, Disha, Hendra, Dio. Thank you for Facebook followers and thank you for the YouTube followers. Next time we'll get some more questions for you. So I will see you all in 2 weeks from now. I'm off.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you everyone. Thank you Mas Puji.
Thank
you.
Ya, sama saya tuh masih
kindly
thinking soal gimana apa sih tahapan atau langkah-langkah